Hi everyone, I'm Jeffrey Allen, and I want to share with you a really powerful insight into how we communicate with each other. And I don't mean our conscious communication with writing or speaking, but rather our energetic communication, what we're sending to each other all the time, even though we're unconscious about it energetically. If you understand this insight, I promise you can avoid countless hours of frustrating, confusing, and needless conversations with people. It's really powerful. This single insight has made a gigantic difference in my life. I noticed this insight in my interactions with others, in my relationships, with my students and clients around the world, with my coworkers, and so on. Everybody really follows the same pattern energetically. Now, to understand it, the first thing you need to know is that the privacy that you believe you have, where you believe if you think something that's private, but if you say something or write something that's not private, that this is not exactly true. This privacy depends on the level of awareness of the people around you. There's three real big categories of awareness that I like to talk about. The first one is people who are very aware or very sensitive and are picking up things from other people all the time. These people are a small percentage of the population, and in general, they often feel that they're a little bit too connected and they don't know how to turn it off. The second category is kind of the most people on the planet right now, and this is our normal semi-consciousness. And we feel kind of private and separate with our thoughts, yet sometimes we have these glimpses of connection or intuition with other people. And this is kind of normal. This is the majority of people on the planet right now. Now, the third category, there's still a few people that are really in this very unconscious state, and that looks generally completely dogmatic. So people are stuck on a particular message or a particular belief, and they're not able to receive any other information from anybody about that. And these people typically feel very disconnected or isolated. And this is kind of, unfortunately, these people are in a lot of pain typically, and this is kind of a little bit dangerous situation to be in. You can think about this awareness like having a radio. Everybody has one. Some people's radios are tuned well, and they get a clear signal. Most people's radios are barely on. They're getting some impressions, but don't really understand the context. And a few people's radios are turned completely off. Everyone has their story about themselves that they're constantly telling and selling to the world. This story is mostly made up of what we want other people to think about us and what we're afraid people will think about us. And we're all buying and selling these stories all day long. When we meet somebody, our first impression of them is this story that they're selling. The first impression they get of us is the story that we're telling and selling. And depending on how conscious we are, we have different reactions to people. For example, if someone wants to impress me, I can feel that story. And if I buy that story, I'll think, wow, that person really impressed me. But if I just observed their story and didn't buy it, I might think, that person really wanted to impress me. This is a very different and a less confused perception. It's very clear that it was simply something they wanted rather than something that I bought and took on. Let me give you a couple more examples. So I had a conversation today with a coworker. We were scheduling a meeting. It was supposed to happen today, and she wasn't able to make this meeting kind of at the last minute. And she was really afraid that I'd be disappointed because she couldn't make this meeting. And I could feel that energy so strongly. It's like it was begging me to agree. She was selling me this story about being disappointed in her. But fortunately, I understand energy, and I just asked myself, am I really feeling disappointed? Or am I simply believing her expectation or her fear that I might be disappointed? And when I put it that way, immediately I could see I'm not disappointed. It's totally okay with me, and I can understand why she has that fear. So now we've got room where we can just have a conversation about that instead of going into a whole miscommunication of disappointment that actually isn't real. And again, the reason I'm sharing these with you is that these are the kinds of situations that tend to lead to long, prolonged communication that's uncomfortable, confusing, frustrating, and really needless. So if you can catch it at the very beginning, you can skip over that whole difficult conversation. It's great. Another example is somebody who radiates confidence into the world. Even if they don't feel it inside, the people will still believe it. And this is why the fake it till you make it really works, because you're broadcasting what you want people to think about you. So for example, if someone does this as a speaker where they're just radiating, I really want people to think I'm a confident speaker. that's the strongest energy that they're broadcasting out, then people are going to think either, wow, she was a really confident speaker, in which case they bought the story, or, wow, she appears very confident on stage. A little bit different statement, but both positive. And the second one includes that deeper level of awareness, of context, the understanding that her story and her reality may not be completely the same. And that's totally okay. Now, the same speaker could have come out with a strong fear that they were selling instead, like, I'm afraid they'll notice I'm nervous. In which case, most people, because they're semi-unconscious, would agree and think she looked nervous. Now, a more conscious person might notice, I think she was worried about looking nervous, but actually, she's a very good speaker. So again, just a deeper level of awareness and that understanding that the story and reality are not always the same. This is such an important understanding. Another powerful example of this is when we're broadcasting our own body insecurities to the world. And this one is a little bit funny if you look at it. It's also a little bit tragic if you look at it deeply. And because when we're selling our insecurities to the world, oftentimes people believe it. I've seen this so many times with couples who are friends, where one person thinks, my partner is just gorgeous and fantastic and perfect for me, yet their partner has a body insecurity that they're broadcasting to the world. So let's take the example. Maybe they're saying, I'm fat. I don't want my partner to think I'm fat. Now, even though their partner isn't thinking that, they're thinking this person is perfect for me and I love them, they're fantastic and I love their body. Over time, because the one person is broadcasting their insecurity, that will start to sink in. Essentially, they will sell that to their partner, whose authentic feeling is just one of admiration. And they will start to pick up this body insecurity, and then they will think it too. And this is the tragic part, because we do this. We program the world around us to our biggest fears, and we basically create self-fulfilling prophecies. And so I want you to just please stop selling your body insecurities to the world. Okay, whatever it is that you think might be your insecurity, I want you to just kind of cross that out and just think of one positive thing that you would like people to think about you. Like, I'd like people to think that I have a great smile. Pick something that's easy for you, and that will start to broadcast out, and you'll convince people of that instead. I want to share one more example with you that I think you'll relate to, and that shows just how powerful this energy communication can be. So sometimes when I'm having a conversation with my wife, everything's going well, and out of the blue, she'll ask me, "Are you angry?" And if I'm not conscious, my response is often, "No, I'm not angry," in a slightly angry and defensive voice, right? What's happening there is that she's picking up my energy of anger before I'm even aware of it. And I have two ways that I can respond to this. One is the defensive, "No, I'm not angry," or "I wasn't angry until you asked me if I was angry, and now I'm angry that you asked me if I was angry," kind of story, which, may sound familiar to some of you. Or I can take the more conscious approach, which is, maybe I am getting a little bit angry, but I haven't noticed it yet, or I didn't want to admit that to myself yet. And if I take this more conscious approach, immediately I moved into greater self-awareness. I can ask myself the question of, what is it that's starting to get to me, or what am I feeling angry about? Is there some confusion or misunderstanding? And I can start to address it before it becomes an overwhelming energy in my space. So this is a perfect way to use energy communication to your advantage. There's 3 things I want you to remember about communicating with energy. First, you're telling and selling your stories to people all the time, even if neither of you are aware of it. You're telling and selling your stories to people all the time, even if neither of you are aware of it. I want you to start to notice this. You'll be surprised how this changes your view of the world. It's one of the most fundamental shifts in perception that you can have, and you're really starting to peek behind the curtains with this awareness. Number 2, your strongest desires and fears are what you're telling and selling to others. Your strongest desires and fears are what you're telling and selling to others. Now, on the positive side, you might be broadcasting something like, "We are deeply in love," and the other person is buying that, and they're falling deeper and deeper in love with you. On the negative side, you might be broadcasting, "I'm afraid you'll think I'm boring," in which case most people will instantly agree, because fears are, in general, quite boring. So remember, you're always selling your story to the world, especially people that are close to you, and I strongly recommend that you only sell the stories that you want people to buy. So take a look at your stories, deal with your fears and insecurities instead of broadcasting them and convincing the world they're true. And if you can't shake them, at least communicate them openly so everyone understands it's a fear. Say something like, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed in me. This is way better, more productive to say it than to just think it and broadcast it energetically. The third point I want you to remember is don't believe other people's stories. Don't automatically agree with their fears and insecurities. Ask yourself, why am I thinking this about my friend? Is this really my thought or just their fear or idea? Do I really want to buy this story? This is especially easy if you notice yourself being judgmental. There's a good chance it's someone else's fear rather than your honest opinion of them. Don't let yourself buy it. This will save you countless hours of frustrating role-playing in your relationships with others. So these 3 items, I'll repeat them again. 1, notice how you're telling and selling your stories with others. 2, only sell the stories that you want people to buy. And 3, only buy the stories that make you feel good. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Jeffrey Allen, and I hope you have fun with your new awareness.